So Camille, maybe you should start. Huh? Yeah.
All right. So thank you all for joining us today. So today we're here to talk about circular economy in northern Quebec territories, and we will present circular economy solutions and recommendations for 6 communities. We will have a 15-minute period to answer questions at the end. If ever it takes longer, we will stay for further questions. So to ask questions, for those using a Teams platform, you may use the Q&A or Q&R option. And for those who are on a Teams webpage, you can use the comment section. And if ever that doesn't work, you can turn on your mic eventually to ask your question after the presentation is done. So the way the presentation will go, we will briefly explain the project context. Then we will have a look at the circular economy concept. We will have a look at the description of the material flow analysis, the MFA, in a northern context. We'll look at 12 circular solutions, the action plans, and we'll end with recommendations. So the project context. One of the measures for Quebec Northern Action Plan of 2020-2023 was to inventory stocks and flows of residual materials in the territory and propose optimization avenues to promote circular economy. This project was supported by 3 partners, either RECYC-QUÉBEC, the Ministère des Ressources, naturelles et des Forêts, and la Société du Plan Nord. These 3 partners are equally funding the study. And RECYC-QUÉBEC was in charge of coordinating this mandate. And RECYC-QUÉBEC mandated Englobe to conduct a material flow analysis in summer 2021 for the purpose of developing an action plan promoting circular economy in certain northern communities, as well as in a mining company. The project is part of a governmental approach that aims to identify optimization solutions in using certain materials in order to promote circular economy north of the 49th parallel. The partners' criteria in selecting the communities and a mining company were the following. A northern village in Nunavik, a Cree community in Iuichi, a non-native community in Bay James, a coastal municipality in Côte-Nord, a village in Basse-Côte-Nord served by boat or a plane, a community linked to the mining company, and a mining company located north of the 49th parallel. So there was a certain representativeness that was asked in order to inspire other northern communities. So this is a project that lasted a little more than a year and a half, so from summer 2021 to spring 2023. The main project steps are listed on the PowerPoint and include an MFA for the 6 communities and the mining company, as well as a residual material characterization for each. For each community and the mining company, an individual report with an action plan was produced. These are actually now available for all on RECYC-QUÉBEC's website, and my colleague will be sending the link in the chat. And also my colleagues will later be sending the PowerPoint and the recording of the webinar by email once they have been published on RECYC-QUÉBEC's website. So before we begin sharing the results, we would like to ensure that everyone has the same basis regarding to the circular economy concepts. So we're going to briefly look at a few notions that will allow all participants to have the same notions. So to present circular economy concept, we'll compare it with a linear economy concept. So a linear economy will consume resources without considering the Earth's capacity of providing these resources. So a linear economy is more of a extraction, manufacture, distribute, use, and discard as waste system, while a circular economy aims to optimize the use of resources at each stage. So instead of discarding the product after its use or consumption, the concept aims to promote durability, reusing, sharing, recovery, so ways to rethink the use of resources. During each and every stage of a product or service, circular economy strategies can be put in place. So for example, by reducing the amount of raw material used to make a product when we're at the extraction phase, then during its manufacturing, we can talk about ways to make it more durable, use recyclable materials instead of all materials being freshly extracted. Then during the distribution, we can think about ways it's being packaged. And after all of that, the product can be used. And instead of discarding it once its use is over, we can bring back the product in different stages of the production stage. So we could, let's say, bring it back in distribution. We can reuse the products, redistribute the product, or share the product with other users. So circular economy makes us rethink the ways of working in order to promote circularity within resources, to reduce use, and allow reuse of the same materials. In total, there are 12 circular economy strategies. I won't go through them all today because it will take quite of our time, but they are all explained in each personalized report, as well as in the summary report. So one of the strategies in circular economy that people are usually most familiar with is industrial ecology, where someone's waste becomes someone else's raw material. So that's the 10th strategy. Then there are other strategies such as donating, reselling, short-term renting, sharing economy, and all these strategies promote other ways to access certain services or products instead of directly buying them. And in fact, it reduces environmental impacts, including reduction of waste. Other strategies also include recycling, composting, and recovery, which would be the last ones that should be prioritized. Because other measures like reducing and optimizing process and products should be done before dealing with the end of the cycle. So the less we transform raw material, the better it is. So during the presentation, we will have a look at certain of these strategies being applied directly to the communities. So after having looked summarily at circular economy concepts in comparison to the linear economy, we're now going to share with you the results of the study. Englobe would like to mention that any resemblance with your situation is very plausible and that the results of the 6 communities can be applied to other situations, and it's meant to inspire other communities as well. For this study, the following participants were selected. So we have Chapet, a non-native community in the James Bay region, Chevry, a village located in the lower North Shore that's only accessible by boat or plane, Inukjuak, a northern village in Nunavik, Long Point de Maingan, a coastal municipality located in the Côte-Nord region, Mistissini, a Cree community in Iwichi, Fermont, a community located north of 49th parallel, and that is linked to a mining company, and ArcelorMittal Mont-Wright, one of the mining companies based in Fermont. So the selection process was based on a voluntary basis. There are a few common factors within the 6 communities that were selected, such as they all have fewer than 5,000 residents. They are all isolated from major urban centers, and some of them are more isolated than others, like Inukjuak and Chevry, that can only be accessed by boat or plane. In all cases, because of this, transportation is a challenge, and it's a challenge in terms of logistics and costs. For example, when trying to transport materials out of the communities, and because they are smaller communities, the quantities that are being transported out are also smaller, which represent a financial burden. In that sense, the idea of a circular economy is to do more with less in order to reduce impact of waste. Today, we'll only be looking at the results of 6 communities, and we won't be discussing the mining company. So the main objective of this study was to conduct an MFA and a residual materials characterization for each participant in order to identify opportunities to reduce and optimize use of resources, identify solutions promoting circular economy, and prepare a personalized action plan for each community. So for the MFA, the methodology used by Englobe focused on 4 themes. We had energy, water, extracted materials, and consumption products. The MFA is also based on information that was collected by surveys, visits, and residual materials characterization. The visits allowed Englobe to meet with the main local contributors in order to fill in the surveys that had been submitted prior to our arrival, and also visit the site and area. Amongst the 6 participating communities, a total of 325 ICEs, so industrial, commercial, and institutional establishments, were targeted and received a survey. The goal of the survey was to collect consumption data of inputs, their management, their outputs, exportations, and releases to the environment. Of this number, Englobe met with 154 ICEs and 108 organizations accepted to participate in the study and answer our surveys. The questions in the surveys address the 4 types of flows, as I mentioned before also. Englobe also completed the field work with residual materials characterization, and all these results are presented in an individual report for each community. The results of the MFA are also presented in each report through Sankey diagrams. These diagrams allow us to better understand the MFAs. So a Sankey diagram looks like what we're seeing on the slide. At first glance, a Sankey diagram can seem a little complex to understand, but when we look at it, it's actually quite simple. So we're just going to look at it before we discuss the results. Also, I know that the Sankey diagram has not been translated. So this one that's on the slide. But for each report that is being translated, so Inukjuak, Mistissini, and the summary report, the associated Sankeys will also be translated. So for the lines that we're seeing on the diagram, the bigger the lines are, the more important their flows are in terms of quantity. And for the smaller flows, which are like here, we did make the lines a little bit bigger or else they would not really show up. At the top of the diagram, that's where we have all the inputs. So for example, materials being extracted or imported. Then we have the usage, so where it's going in the community, and the stocks, so what stays in the community. For example, buildings. And then here we have the outputs, so either the releases to the environment or exportations. So for this graphic, we're presenting Chevry that has more of a linear economy. Note that most of the communities we did visit for the project had a linear economy also. In this graphic, we see that all resources are imported except water extracted from wells and firewood that constitute most of the energy portion. And so here we have the extraction, here are the importations. And after that, we have the usage, so the materials that are being used throughout the community. And then we have the releases here. So what is going to the environment or that is exported. So nothing is coming back in the flows. Everything is more of a linear, so more of a line. Nothing from the outputs is coming back in usage in the community. Well, nothing that is seen on the diagram. There is things we don't see on the diagram, and there are things that are done. But I mean, for the bigger outputs and inputs, it's a straighter line. Now we have an example of Chapet's flow, which shows a circular flow. And we can actually see this directly on the diagram. So we see here there's a loop, and we see a second loop here. Oops. So Chappé has at least two loops of energy circularity that are very much linked. So the first loop that we see here is where electricity production that produces heat rejection and that is used for greenhouses. And the second loop is where the forestry industry produces wood residues that are used as fuel for electricity production. In that sense, the circular loops are closely linked. For example, if the forestry industry ceased their operations, there could be energy production stop that could impact the greenhouse productions. If a loop is broken, the whole system is endangered. So this is what a circular flow looks like and what a linear flow looked like on the slide before. So by producing an MFA and by gathering all the information from ICEs and the residual material characterization, we were able to establish an accurate picture of each community, and we were able to identify circularity solutions for each one. Each solution can be related to one or more circularity strategies. As it was already mentioned before, there are 12 strategies. So the ones that are in bold and that are bigger will be of interest throughout the next slides by presenting examples of application in these communities, either that are already applied or suggestions we have made in the reports. Note that each strategy is addressed in the reports that are available on RECYC-QUÉBEC's webpage, but we won't be going through them all today. So now let's take a look at the results. So the first strategy we'll address today concerns responsible consumption and procurement. So this strategy is defined as integrating sustainable development and social responsibility in the purchasing or acquisition of goods and services by consumers or private and public organizations. So one of the solutions that can be applied to northern communities are electrification of municipal vehicles. This would reduce quantities of fuel that are imported and used on the territory. And some of these communities, such as Long Point de Mega, already had such charging stations available. So in that sense, municipal vehicles could have their own stations as well. Another element that can cause quite a few headaches for isolated communities is the management of construction, renovation, and demolition materials. For example, in Chevry, prior to our arrival, a whole house had been demolished, and all the building materials had been sent to the landfill. If the demolition had been planned instead of using bigger machinery, certain materials could have been recovered. Therefore, in this context, a demolition permit with recycling and deconstruction requirements managed by the municipality would limit the quantities that are being sent to the landfill. Therefore, these materials could be reused or recycled. The next strategy we'll briefly discuss is process optimization. That's defined as improving each of an organization's processes by seeking to reduce the consumption of raw materials, energy, and water, and the amount of waste that's generated. So for this strategy, we'll stay in Chevry. In Chevry, all materials that are entering over there are shipped by the Bella des Gagnés. And then there's a barge that's operated by STQ that bring these items to shore. The power of the barge crane doesn't allow the lifting of a sea container. So because of this, the merchandise is dropped off at Harrington Harbor's dock, and the crates and pallets are then transported to Chevry. A crane that would have more power would allow transferring containers directly to Chevry's dock, would significantly reduce the number of manipulations and time necessary for this process. This would also have an impact on returning certain materials, such as recyclable materials. Chevry does collect recyclables, and they sort them and they get them shipped off. So right now, because they have to use the crate, Paper and cardboard are being packed separately and wrapped on wooden pallets before they get sent off to the sorting center located off the island. Note that all the work related to recycling is also done by volunteers. Now for the drinking water and wastewater management treatment, the village of Inukjuak, the drinking water distribution and wastewater management are covered by a tanker truck and a collecting truck. So each day, so each building has its own water tank and gray water tank. Each day, a truck round is made to deliver and collect water in order to send them to a wastewater treatment lagoon. This represents a lot of back and forth with trucks for water management. An aqueduct and sewer system would allow to reduce GHG emissions associated to this transportation. An example of these systems in northern communities do exist. For example, there's Harrington Harbor that has actually constructed an aerial system directly on the rock. And this allows more than 100 residents to have continuous access to water and a sewage system as well. Now we'll look at sharing. We'll look at the sharing economy. Sharing economy is defined as a set of exchanges among users that relies on shared use, collaborative production, and barter. So this type of strategy could be applied to different communities by, for example, sharing equipment. The first picture we see is a cardboard press that can be found at Fermont's co-op. It's used to press the cardboard so that it can be sent down south in order to be recycled after. Yet it's only used a few hours a week. And during our visit, the co-op manager indicated that he would be open to sharing his press with other users. And when we did visit Fermont, we saw that large quantities of cardboard were being thrown away at the landfill. So this cardboard press could be shared with other users in order to ship more cardboard down south. And in Mistini, the situation is similar. They do recycle materials as well, and all the cardboard that is being transported out of the community is pressed with a cardboard press before. Another strategy we're going to look at today is donating and reselling, which is described as putting used goods back into circulation by donating or selling them to a third party. So it allows products to have a second life. For example, in Fermont, the Eco Center separates items such as furniture, windows, and other objects that are still in good condition. This work is often done by volunteers working directly at the municipality. And although it's not a structured initiative, it's a good example of reusing materials. Other words, these items would be going to the landfill, like we see on the picture of Long Point. Nevertheless, for Long Point, the landfill responsible try and collect certain objects that are being sent there and that are still in good condition in order to give them a second life. But it's not a structured initiative either, but it's something that is done. We also did see other examples of donating and reusing that don't need much organization, like Facebook pages. Certain communities have Facebook pages dedicated to reselling and donating items. So for example, there's the Mistini Quebec buy and sell everything else, or Info Fermont. And on these pages, people share or sell things they have. Then there could also be a circuit put in place in order to reuse wooden pallets because they are generated in large quantities, and that is something we also saw in most of the communities we visited. And other examples of this applied solution is that certain landfills keep aside objects or different components so that they can be used to repair items such as fridges or cars. Repairing gives these objects a second life instead of them being thrown away. And that is also the case for Chevry. As I mentioned before, industrial ecology is one of the strategies that are best known. It's when someone's waste becomes someone's raw material. The MFA analysis identified circularities that were already in place, such as Borea, that's a company located in Chapet, that uses heat generated by the cogeneration plant for their process to extract essential oils. And these oils are extracted from wood residues coming from the forest industry. And the heat generated by the plant is also used to heat the greenhouse that produces tomatoes. In Long Point, another example is an industry processing and transforming seafood products is in operation, and large quantities of crab residues are produced, and these are used to revegetate landfills. Not only is this very fertile for the soil, but it also avoids importing fertilizers. And finally, in certain regions of Quebec, different economic development organizations at the municipal level or environmental organizations have put in place symbiosis and organized network workshops. These workshops aim to connect waste generators and users together, and it helps to merge different actors together. That is something that could be done also in some of the communities we visited. Now we'll look at recycling and composting. So recycling aims to reduce waste getting sent to the landfill by using recovered materials to replace raw materials in the manufacturing process. Composting is defined as a biological treatment process that uses aerobic microorganisms to biodegrade organic matter. In the south of Quebec, these activities are existing and are very well established. In northern communities, recycling implies a lot of manipulation and transportation, which mean that these activities are less feasible for smaller communities. So one way to facilitate recycling could be by finding ways to reduce the density of materials to facilitate their transportation. And here we have the example from Mistini that have a barrel press, which reduces its volume of 90%. Now for composting, we recommended organic matter treatment in most of the communities. This reduces quantities being sent to the landfill, and the output of this process, so the compost, can be used by the community. During our visit, we also saw that certain communities like Long Point used domestic composters. This shows us that some residents do have the will to proceed to organic matter treatment. And Mistini has chosen to treat their organic matter, as we see in the picture here, with a rotating composter. So different types of industrial composters are available for communities, and other composting methods as well can be applied according to the community's realities and desires. And finally, we will discuss the last strategy, which is recovery. Recovery is defined as any non-disposal operation that aims to obtain useful products or energy from residual materials. There are many materials that can be recovered, for example, by recovering heat from wooden pallets or cardboard. We can also think about ways to recover, for example, by using biosolids as fertilizers or using fishing rope to produce carpets or other materials. So now that we've talked about circular economy strategies, the next slides will briefly present action plans that were proposed in each community. We won't go through each and every action, but we invite you once again to look at the reports if you wish to have detailed information on these action plans. So we'll start with Chapet. For this city, we proposed some of the following actions because they're not all listed. We proposed collecting and processing organic matter, development of wood recovery solutions, development of ash recovery solution. Ashes are generated by the cogeneration plant. Recovery of residual granular materials such as brick, asphalt, and concrete. For Mistissini, the actions included improvements to the eco-center, because they already have an eco-center, improvement of the management of products that are targeted by the EPR. The EPR is the Extended Producer Responsibility. Then optimizing compost production, creation of space for donation and reuse, and the development of wood recovery solutions. As we mentioned, a lot of large quantities of wood were present in most of the communities. Then some of the actions recommended for Inukjuak included developing the new northern landfill and closing the existing landfill because the existing one is a bit problematic and it has reached its end of life. Then we have setting up an eco center in order to ship out certain materials, recover cardboard, and collecting and processing organic matter as well. For Long Point de Mengan, the following actions were suggested. So collecting and processing organic matter once again, development of wood recovery solutions, short-term renting of a wood chipping equipment. There is a wood chipper available in Côte-Nord that can be transported in different areas. So maybe a sharing economy could be done here. Then there's the electrification of municipal vehicles and promoting source separation of glass containers. Because there's a lot of tourists, it's important to promote a good source separation as well as the drop-off points themselves. Then for Fermont, the actions included developing the new trench landfill, and we know that that is an action that has already been started by the city. Recovering cardboard, collecting and processing organic matter, development of wood recovery solutions, and opening a used goods store. Like we already said, the Eco Center already puts aside certain materials, and that's done by the employees. But something a bit more organized could really take off even more. Then finally, for Chevry, the following actions were recommended. So we have collecting and processing organic matter again. We have improving the management of recyclable materials and returnables. Like we said, they're already collecting them, and these items are being shipped off by boat. Then improving the transportation barge, like we had mentioned before in the 12 when we discussed the strategies. And recovering and exporting metals. Large quantities of metals have been stocked for decades in the landfill at Chevry, and that's actually a challenge for most of the isolated communities. Metal doesn't burn, and the transportation costs are very high. So this action aims to take measures in exporting these materials out of Chevry. Like I said, if you wish to have more details on these recommendations, or these recommended actions, I mean, you can have a look at each personalized report, as well as the summary report. In fact, you can find each action plan in the summary reports appendix. We will now do a little wrap up. So in total, the study identified 175 circular economy solutions for 6 communities and a mining company. And here we see the numbers of solutions presented in the study and each strategy associated. Of these 175 solutions, 105 were unique and specific to one of the communities or mining company. And for the action plans, 23 priority actions were identified and proposed to the participants, as well as 16 lower priority actions. Despite the specifics of each studied community, many similarities between them exist. First, they have reduced accessibility. Then their resources are imported, most of them. Then recovering services are absent or incomplete. And their landfill infrastructures are adapted to their local realities. And as mentioned, the action plans Englobe has put together have multiple similarities. So these action aims to reduce materials entering the landfills, reduce imported materials, and increase resilience in the communities. Because of this, certain actions were proposed to more than one community. So for example, collecting and processing organic matter, setting up or improving an eco-center, including drop-off points of products targeted by EPR, such as batteries, mercury lamps, household and appliances and air conditioners, paint containers, also the wooden pallets management, and improving recyclable materials collection. During this project, Englobe was given a chance to meet with active communities, action-oriented and conscious of the challenges residual materials involve. Englobe observed communities that want to take charge, that stand together, and that wish to act on their environment. And all they need is the right tools to put these actions in place. So it's now time for the Q&A session. It's now 2:07, so technically we have 20 minutes left for questions, but if ever there's questions that pass 2:30, we can stay longer and answer those questions. But before we get there, just a little reminder that the reports for each communities are now available online on RECYC-QUÉBEC's website. For Mississini, Inukjuak, and the summary report, the English versions will be available within a few weeks from now. And finally, we'd like to thank the whole Englobe team that participated, the partners, either RECYC-QUÉBEC, Ministère des Ressources naturelles et des Forêts, and la Société du Plan Nord. We would also like to thank the 6 communities and mining company for their contribution and participation to this project. And finally, we would like to thank everyone else that participated, whether it's the ICEs or the locals that welcomed us in their town and shared all this information with us. So thank you. So we're now going to take questions, if there are.
Actually, Camille, there is
Yes.
no question in the Q&A.
Okay.
But if you want to speak with Camille or with the team, don't be shy. You can raise your hand or unmute your mic. Oh, we have to do it? Okay, so just raise your hand and we will take the question live because we are not so many today. Nope.
Yes.
Don't worry either. It will be unmute soon. Okay,
Here I
there.
am. Hey.
Yeah.
Great presentation. Really enjoyed it. I just have a question about the electrified vehicles in the north. First question was, is there, with the ones that are up there, do you know if there are, problems when it gets super, super, super cold up there to work them? And secondly, about maintenance, just because although they've been around and in the market for a while, maintaining them and servicing them, there aren't as many places you can take them. So I was just curious to know if that has been a challenge or how that would, work up in the remote communities.
Do you want to answer, Camille, or?
I think
or
you
if your
can go
study
on,
even went
yeah.
into that. I just
Okay.
it
Well,
was
No,
because
either.
we have examples in Fermont. I'm just thinking about Fermont because they're trying to get, they were trying to do a project with buses. So they do have a project with electrical buses right now. They did have problems with the cold, but I think they were trying to figure out a way to make it work. But for smaller cars, I'm not sure. Jean-Luc?
Either ArcelorMittal has just launched their program for electric bus, and they do some publicity with that, so we can speak about this program. They have actually 3 buses, and it seems to be good. So so I think that Fermont is very, very, very cold in the winter, but the most important thing to know is what is your source of electricity. If you take uh, electricity from the generator, well, it's maybe not the good way to use a vehicle. But for Long Point, Mysticini, Chapet, Fermont, you can use grid power. So, and you know, in Quebec, the grid power is mostly green. So it's a good thing to think about using electrical vehicle.
Oh, thank you. Thank
And
you. I
for
appreciate
the
it. Yeah.
maintenance, uh, well, you just have to sign with someone who have the com- the know-how to maintain those vehicles.
Makes sense. That's great. Great. Again, really appreciate it. Enjoyed this program. I think we should do more of it.
Anyone else who wants to, Madame Rioux Paquette? You have to unmute your mic. No, it doesn't work.
I think it's good now.
That's it. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. I'm just wondering for Inukjuak, you proposed that, well, the landfill it needs a new one. Have you considered, well, they need a new one, but I'm sure better management too after opening a landfill would be really important. Because in other communities that have their landfills and they're not full, I think a lot could be done for better management of landfills, and it would like really help.
Kimmy?
I think that's actually things that we did take into account in the reports, better management. But I know they are already doing, well, they were having a new landfill, but that one had problems too. So there's different aspects to take into consideration, the environment and all of that. But yes, for sure, better management of the site itself, who can come in, who can come out, and yeah. Did you want to add anything else, Jean-Luc?
No.
Okay.
That was good.
Are there any other questions or comments or ideas?
Something to share with us? Don't be shy. Oh. Mr. Cookie, yes. No, yes. Great.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for the presentation. I want to add a comment about Inukjuak. Of course, the actual situation about the new dump site with the project is not already finished. And the dump site, which is in the village, that they need to be closed. In fact, they didn't attempt the end of life yet, but the problem is the landfill is in the village, and when they do the open burning, the houses are less than 500 meters, so for the regulation is not correct. But closing a dump site or a landfill, north of landfill, is not an easy way. So maybe KRG are working with the Minister of with the Mavash to have a plan for Inukjuak and to make an eco center in the place of the dump site. And the new one is it's away from the village, so when they will do open burning, it will be okay. Also, this summer, Inukjuak will have a composting project. Will begin this autumn. That's a good stuff. I just want also to make some clarification. I do read the report. Maybe some information about Inukjuak need to be corrected. We will send our comment to RECYC-QUÉBEC and Englobe about that. So just I want to make a comment on that.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments. And just to make sure, Mr. Cookie, the comments are more about the community or about the action plans?
It's about what is happening, for example, for recycling. So I saw the table. It shows that in Ukjuak, it's only are recycling mercury lamp, but they are recycling paint, they are recycling used tire, some of those stuff. So we have some comment about what's is really happening. It's about what's really happening in the village, not about the action plan that you propose, because we are open to the new idea of circular economy that it would help. Unfortunately, I don't see too much for Inukjuak because of it's maybe a remote localization, but we try to work to have a new idea to be able.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions or comments?
So if you don't have any other comments, we will end this webinar. I want to thanks especially Camille to take the the microphone to speak about the circular economy. As you can hear, my English is not so good, so Camille was better than me, and she worked a lot on this project. So it was a great exposure for her and for the whole team, Melanie Deveau and Dominique Lafleur also. I want to thank them and to make sure that they have all cheering applause for them. So thank you very much, team. And so we will close this on this last sentence. And thank you very much to have attended this webinar. And have a good circular economy day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.